We felt the podcast episode with Dr. Parker Hayes of Lasting Impact Wellness was so important. The content that we decided to break it up into 2 podcasts. And this is the second part of the podcast we do with him. And I hope you enjoy it. I want to throw another curveball at you, though. So you're working with a business owner, right? About the pressures, about, getting themselves, decision making. And then they get this, there's that other environmental piece that they don't do the calculus on. And that's when a family member, a key employee, starts to, that they're important. And so they now have their own set of values, right? Why are you selling this company? You should be giving it to me, sense of entitlement. Or a key employee is a big disappointment to you because he or she's now trying to leverage this transaction to put themselves in a better position so they can get more money and, basically squeeze you, so to speak. And after, you've dealt with these people, you've had lunch with these people, they've been at your family gatherings, and all of a sudden you get hit in the side of the face with, what the heck? I mean, how do you, and most business owners, it's not uncommon. It's more common than not that this comes up, when they are notified that we're selling. How do you work with someone, that they kind of like, because he's now got to deal with all the stuff on the outside from the buyer stress and pressures and keeping a level, making sound decisions with his advisors. But now he's got inside, he's got to kind of hold this whole thing back. You don't want to show the buyers that you got internal conflict. I mean, that to me is one of the, from my perspective, biggest challenges that I deal with over 25 years. And because I'm parachuted right in the middle of that and trying to work through those situations. How do you address that? I mean, how do you, that, because that's a big issue.
In the emergency department, we have all kinds of protocols. This is exactly how it's going to go. We're going to do it in an algorithmic way, right from ABC, airway, breathing, circulation. We're going to run the trauma this way. It's going to be spelled out exactly, just like a pilot in the cockpit. We're going to hit that checklist. It almost never goes that way.
Right.
It's going to be different every time. There will always be some craziness curveball that's thrown into the mix, even in the most clockwork appearing resuscitation or shift or heck, career.
Mm-hmm.
So being comfortable with the fact that there are going to be sudden changes, that's a trainable skill as well. People in the back of the aircraft get a little freaked out when there's turbulence and the thing's bouncing around. But I always imagine to myself that the pilot up front is, they may notice because they care a little bit, but they don't really, it doesn't really affect them because in the big picture, this big hunk of steel is going in the right direction. The values section that we just talked about in terms of its transcendence before and after a deal, it also not only makes you more durable and able to move on, but it also makes one more tolerant to the vagaries and variances that are likely to occur during the transition. So knowing who you are, even though suddenly there's a crisis or a curveball, I think it allows you to handle those changes in the moment as well as transcend the thing overall. I don't know if I mixed too many metaphors overall, but
no, it's been.
I think the take home there is if you know where you're going and your eyes are on the prize, then you're a lot more resilient when you take a variety of side hits or sudden changes to course offered by others.
I think that's very well stated because I always say why are we doing it? Because I always come back to it. Right? I said, what's motivating to sell? What are your goals and objectives? I never lose sight of that with our clients because when we get into these turbulence, right, or someone sheer whatever it is, I say, okay, let's talk through it, and then it's all about what's back to the core reason why we're here. like you just stated. And if they can stay that course, then the likelihood is they'll get to the end game that they're looking for. So, but it's, it's somewhat of a challenge, which, as all these things are happening and, you're getting the level, it's a boiling point. We typically call it, and sometimes you start to shut down the ownership. Because the last thing I want is that phone to stop ringing from my client. Because if I don't hear from him during this time frame for, say, 24 hours, I need my back antennas go up. There's something going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And I pick up the phone, and if I don't get him the first time, I call him again. I said, like, hey, give me a call. Let's talk. Call me anytime. Sometimes I get a call at 8:00 at night. We call that the deal fatigue. You kind of talk about it as, I guess in the medical burnout, right? I mean, how do you identify it from a clinical perspective, maybe, and how you do in your business? And how do you, being tired, you're working so hard. Another one is that you have no energy left. How do help ownership know that, it's to decipher between a couple of different things here so they can get back focused on and energized to get the deal done?
Yeah, depersonalization is, in scientific literature on burnout, is one of the main signs, sort of emotional detachment or depersonalization, where a person basically steps back to some degree instead of fully engaging in the situation and saying, whatever.
Yeah.
They're frustrated, et cetera. I think recognizing that as a potential symptom of the condition is worthwhile. Especially something as personal as owning a business or selling that business. But it can swing too far the other way, over involvement at an emotional level instead of seeing the general course and mission to be followed can be a problem too. But I think that the elements of burnout, as we describe it, often do contain depersonalization or emotional detachment, but sometimes it can be more tangible things like just it's too much work for the capability of the person. And nobody wants to admit that, but long nights, poor sleep, over involvement, not caring for oneself, it not only creates decision fatigue, but it also erodes judgment. And that can be an element of burnout too, especially if it's not abject failure, but it's chronic stress and inflammation that never get managed. And eventually one's judgment is clouded when one looks back on it later. Well, and we could go on, but burnout to me is a complex thing that most of all results in a mismatch. What you've got, what you want, and what you can produce in the moment, given the circumstances, become mismatched. And finding where that mismatch occurs and how to align them better is the place to start.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. I mean, for us, because we meet with new clients, right? It's like, okay, I got 18 people calling me to buy my business, right? Believe me, that is not the way you want to go. You want to engage, and you want to have us work with you, driving the bus to the right destination where you want to be long term. But I always say when I meet with prospective clients that, you're literally at the 1 yard line, and that last 1 yard is a heavy lift. It's going to take a huge investment, not just financially, but emotionally for you and your partner and your family. Investment in hiring high qualified advisors, investment bankers, accountants, lawyers, wealth managers, et cetera, to help you get over the goal line. And you can't shortchange it, right? You have to make that investment in time, energy, and money to get there. And if you're not prepared for that, what you guys do in your business, it could lead to that, you just wall everything off and you decide, screw it, I'm not doing it. Right. And that's the last thing, which is a wrong, irrational decision. So I take a lot of what you're saying here, and because, I live it every day with clients, especially in, like, I call it the last 72 hours. is a very highly emotional, a very difficult environment. And as I shared on a previous podcast, usually when it's over, I get a phone call from my client said, well, thank you for putting up with me. So what, so when do you kind of recognize that from your business? Like how you deal a lot with the NBA players, Fortune 500 executives outside of just business owners, right? When do you kind of recognize that they're running on fumes and what you can do to help them? I mean, because NBA, people don't realize like they're all making a lot of money. I mean, forget the money. And they're playing a game every other day, every other city. They're on a plane all day long. They're in a different hotel room. I mean, there's a lot going on here. So forget about all the money you make and just trying to perform at a high level every day. I mean, how do you work with folks like that?
I don't think that those folks are really any different than everyday executives, CEOs, constant travel, long nights. I think the pervasiveness of their profession through all the hours of the day in high performers is almost ubiquitous. As you well know, founders and CEOs live and breathe their business. It becomes a cliche, but it really is that. They think about it all the time. I'm a business owner. I think about this business all the time. I used to think about the residency program I was running or emergency medicine all the time. Being able, though, to find recharge moments and step away from it, even for brief periods of time. No one's asking anyone to perform at a lower level. We're asking people to perform at a higher level more sustainably. Well, that means recovery. That means clearing mind. That means avoiding the cognitive performance collapse that occurs under sustained, unrelenting stress. A physical analogy one might use: if you go to the gym and you lift weights, you actually break down muscle at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Then what you do is you provide fuel and then you provide recovery time. And that's when your body says, I'm going to build that muscle back and make it a little better than it was before. In other words, the strength gain occurs during recovery, not during the exercise. If you exercise without recovery, you not only don't get stronger, you get injured. You get overuse syndromes. You break down without the opportunity to build back up. It's the same cognitively. It's the same from a professional durability standpoint. Having hard, focused, stressed, exertional focus on one's professional identity is great. Stress is not the enemy, it's the friend. As long as there's sufficient time for that stimulus to do its work and promote growth during a dedicated recovery period.
Which sometimes you got to take a deep breath, right? I mean, that's from a business. I've had clients that really upset about things, and we worked through. And I said, look, just go out to dinner with your husband or wife tonight. Just let it go for now. Let's just take a deep breath, relax, think about things, and let's talk about tomorrow. I don't need a decision from you right now. They can wait, right? I mean, don't push yourself to a point you're making something that's you're not comfortable with. So I use that a lot in my business when I'm talking with my clients is, okay, let's talk through it. Okay, you know what? Enjoy the weekend. We'll pick it up next week, right? Just kind of a reset so they can really, you would say, let your body repair. Like I'm in the gym every other day myself. Got into free weights maybe 10 years ago. I never liked them, but it's changed my life, right? It's the thing, the recovery. It's a whole different ballgame. My endurance, my mental as well as physical is better than I was when I was 40 years old. It's just something that I will continue to use. So I use those tools myself, and I really try to get my client to sometimes reset and just relax. Let's go through it. So when we look at this, some practical tools, right? I mean, you guys have built a great business, you and your wife, Laura, and so when you see a client and you work with a client, say for several months, you may check with them every quarter. what's some tools like a, a leader, business owner, executive should use in practice? Because if you don't practice it, it's going to go. You're going to lose it. It's like, oh, I did that. What was that again? You come back to it 2 months later. What do you like a day to day? Like what's in the toolkit they should be thinking about?
Yeah, there's some great tools that we talk with clients about, both in workshop format or in ongoing consultative methods. First, under the pillar of high pressure decision making, three things: decision windows and structure. Secondly is pre-mortem thinking. And third is pressure buffers. So let me explain what those mean. The first, decision windows, is when are you going to be best at seeing this clearly? Where, what time of day,
Mm,
under what circumstances, et cetera. Where will you do your best thinking over this, and will you allot that time to dedicate towards this? Or will you continually try to make decisions under duress? Structured thinking within that, we talked about somewhat before, the emergency mindset, algorithmic versus creative thinking, which one applies to whatever decision you're working on. The second tool set is what we call pre-mortem thinking. Everyone knows what a post-mortem is, or an autopsy. Hey, what killed this patient? We want to know
mm,
why. Pre-mortem thinking is, what could kill this patient? What could be the fatal flaw here? What could tank this project, this idea, this initiative? We often do contingency plans. Which way could this go? What are the nuances here? But emergency doctors think, what's the worst? What is the fatal, lethal threat here? And how do we definitely avoid that? Sometimes that applies to pressure packed decision making too. And thirdly, pressure buffers. And that has to do with things we have just been talking about. Uh, have you slept well? Are you hydrated? Are you comfortable? Are you in a quiet space? Are you creating conditions to succeed uh, because you know it's going to be pressure packed? Pressure packed with all kinds of crazy loud music and your kids screaming and the alarms going off in the ER, or whatever your version is. You may be used to it, but it doesn't necessarily create the best conditions. So engineer success by creating a window to do it, imagining the worst case scenario and avoiding it, and then building pressure buffers to enhance the circumstances. The tools that we use in values anchoring, and especially in the energy stewardship, or making oneself able to age and live for a long time, those are more complex, but they have their own sets of tools, and we work with clients specifically on those depending on their needs.
that's those are great tools, and I hope our audience, is keep on hitting the replay button on those this last 15, 20 minute of our conversation, because I certainly am. It, what do you think is where business? What they one thing that you think you see business owners underestimating? As you look to they're going through things and they're doing their calculus, they're ready to sell, and where is that commonality of, maybe it's not because people are different, but what do you see them constantly underestimate?
Business owners, in many ways, are much like high performers in other industries. They consider themselves to be truly unique, even though they may not be, in the following ways. They think they can outwork it, outthink it, outlast it, and eventually they can't. Doctors think this way all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not popular to say, but it is very true. You cannot outwork biology, psychology, or time,
Right.
but you can work with them. You can utilize those things to your benefit, but you can't just outwork them and push them aside indefinitely. Another one that I like to use is, biology can be patient early on if you start to run up a tab, but it does not miss charges, and it always gets paid. I think business owners, like a lot of high chargers, assume that they can delay that invoice indefinitely, but often with the interest accrued, it becomes truly oppressive when they finally face the bill. So, what do they underestimate? Unfortunately, the forces under which we all operate. It not only catches up to them, but in retrospect, it sometimes has prevented them from achieving the highest performance that they could all along.
Yeah, we have a few clients that we've dealt with in the past that, one eventually sold, one decided he didn't, for many of these same reasons we're talking about today. Is the why piece, but they think they're invincible. They think, oh, I'm fine, I'll be great. They just don't think outside of life, and they look at the corridor of their desk, and they go to their computer every day, or they go walk the floor of the factory, and they think, oh, it's just going to go on. When I'm 76, I'll work another 5 years. I'm like, okay, it's your call, right? But it's not the right decision, because time catches up with you at some point in time, and it's going to have not impact you only from a physical and mental, financial perspective, but also impact your family, because our clients, majority of their wealth is tied up in the equity of their business. And the longer they wait and go buy it, what ends up happening is that value starts to appreciate, because it's just, you're not up to speed like you used to be. You're not getting any new customers. You're not growing. Your margins are going down. You're not reinvesting, all that kind of stuff. So it is a it's an area that's constantly underestimated. And we try to work with business owners, to kind of get them in the right spot. So how about yourself? I mean, this has been a real pivot in a career. What impact for you, for your durability? You and Laura have this great business. What kind of tools do you continually use on a daily basis from everything you've done to help you be a better you and a better performer for your clients?
Well, lest I sound too preachy in the previous section about not outworking biology, I know I used to think I could. I know that I used to say things like, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, you can do that, but you probably will hasten the moment.
Right.
Um, I think the um, overriding factor that has helped my durability is consistency.
Mm.
People get very wrapped up in, should I do this hack, that hack, what kind of exercise, exactly which diet, and so on. And I think they miss the fact, and I missed the fact for a long time, that it probably doesn't matter nearly as much as long as you're doing something consistently,
Mm.
daily, consistently sleeping, consistently moving, consistently providing adequate and thoughtful nutrition, consistently acting in accordance with your values, consistently knowing what you're doing, and lastly and critically, consistently cultivating your social connections around you. Those things contribute more mightily to your durability and longevity than any particular much smaller level control that you can think of.
That is incredibly well said, and I think consistency is underestimated in what you do in your life and in your business. And I really thank you for being a guest today. How do our listeners find you? I mean, this is such important information, such an important topic for our audience. How do they find you?
Well, thank you so much. We work with leaders and organizations of all types. Our website is lastingimpactwellness.com. Doctors Parker and Laura Hayes. They can find me on YouTube through my TEDx talk and ER Doctor's Prescription for Longevity, Dr. Parker Hayes. But through the website, an email or reach out of any type through LinkedIn, we would welcome a conversation on any level, even if it's a simple health related or well-being related question, all the way up to long-term organizational coaching, consulting, speaking opportunities, all those are available. I also would welcome any of your listeners to our podcast, Lasting Impact Wellness podcast, available on major platforms. We had taken a hiatus from it over the last year, but there are quite a number of episodes there that may be of interest available through those platforms.
Well, can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us today. This is such an important topic for our audience. Dr. Parker Hayes, Lasting Impact Wellness, greatly appreciate your time.
It's been my honor, Keith. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. So this concludes our podcast series on emotional preparedness, mental health as it relates to business owners preparing for sale. We felt it's such an important topic that we actually had 4 guests from 4 different backgrounds on this. And if you enjoyed today's episode, just feel free to click the link below to watch the first episode with Dr. Hayes.